And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Mooncast podcast, where we talk about digital assets, digital payments, and beyond. I'm Razi Nizar, and as usual, I have my partner in crime, Sanat Karkar. Today, we are very, very excited to introduce to you guys to one of the key driving forces behind women in crypto. She's the country manager of Luno Malaysia. And fun fact, she's also a former colleague of mine. Please welcome Scarlett Chai.
Hi, everyone.
Scarlett, how have you been?
I'm good. I've been excited and really honored to be invited to the Mooncast podcast. Gonna have a good time chatting with two gentlemen, and let's see what kind of content we'll create today.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, we are so excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Now, you're already a well-known crypto leader in Malaysia, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and Luno?
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Scarlett Chai, as per my name in the recording itself. I am the country manager for Luno Malaysia. So I think in general, Luno is Malaysia's leading regulated digital asset exchange platform. We serve over 1 million verified customers in Malaysia itself. We are also the first digital asset exchange that was given an approval from the Securities Commission of Malaysia to operate in the market since 2019. So you can say we're quite early pioneers of the crypto industry in general. As a regulated DEX, we also are under the oversight of Securities Commission. In short form, we can call them as SC. In today's discussion. And Luno also complies with the central banks of Malaysia, BNM, on matters relating to anti-money laundering, FATF, or even travel rules, right? So that's in sum Luno. But I think not only that, Luno makes it safe, easy, and secure for average users like you and me to invest and get access to cryptocurrency, or in the formal terminology that we use in Malaysia context is digital assets, right? We also allow customers to stake digital assets, which means you get staking rewards in return if you do use our staking service. That's Luno. But about myself, I joined Luno in 2019. So it has been 6 years journey. I actually hit my 6-year milestone with Luno in January this year itself. I was the third full-time employee of the local team, as well as the first female. So you can say that I really bring in some dynamic shift to the team where it was just boys. It's fun, of course, but then again, it exposes me to this whole different kind of industry, right? I do not have an education in finance, tech, or economy. Like people would thought that you work in crypto or even law. People would think that, you must have such background to be in crypto because you're just passionate. In fact, I have a master's in petroleum geology, which is like totally not related at all. I really stumbled on this by chance and opportunity. It's like an offer came along and say that, hey, would you like to join this really cool and techy industry, which is like crypto, and would you like to play a part in like driving development in the industry? And we are applying for license with the regulators and everything. And I'm just like a 20-plus-year-old young lady, just finished my master's, had a few years of working experience, and we're like, this sounds kind of interesting and cool. And to me, I'm just like, if I was given the chance to join a booming industry from the start, would you want it? Like if you want to join the e-commerce or you want to join the internet or stuff like, all this related development, would you want it? And I'm just like, crypto is the one. And like, all right, I'll like to join this and jump aboard the rocket ship. And it has been 6 years since then. And it has been nothing but wild and fun. And I've learned a lot along the way as well.
Yeah, congratulations on the 6-year milestone. So like, what is it about crypto that led you to that shift?
I think that the whole concept of like it being like the first thing that introduced or got me interested was obviously the white paper that Satoshi wrote about Bitcoin, where it's like peer-to-peer. Like this kind of concept is so foreign, right? We're Asians. We grew up in a society or like culture where there's always centralized, authority or centralized governing bodies that decides like, what education you should be studying. You need to do things a certain way. And suddenly this white paper got introduced and you're like, oh, wow, that's a really cool concept. And of course, the sense of FOMO when people around you are like starting to I see this tweet, I see this article in Reddit, there's people talking about it. And I got curious, right? And that's where and then obviously that opportunity came about to say that, hey, we're from a regulator, like we want to be regulated. Like it's very rare to get crypto platforms that say that we are pro-regulation. We want to approach the regulators and apply for licenses or get approval and want to do things the right way. But it's of course very challenging because first of all, you need to educate and create awareness. And those are the kind of things that it's just, quite that kind of like pulls me into this whole industry. And I'm like, this is an opportunity that I can't let go. And what's the worst you can get, right, Razin? Like if it didn't work out, I think I'm still young enough to try or pivot. It's about pivoting. So yeah, that's how it is.
So follow-up question on that. So how far into the Luno journey before you joined them? And what year was it founded and when did you join and what capacity did you start at?
So Luno has the brand itself. We're already in Malaysia since end 2016, 2017. So that's where, the hype of ICOs and people starting to really talk about crypto started to boom then. I only joined in 2019 because obviously there was so much hype and then it went down. If you're an OG, you would know that the 2017 was the boom and then it went down and there were a lot of negative sentiments about it. And that's where jurisdictions around the world, they were starting to look into what's this crypto or digital assets. And that's the same timing along as when Securities Commission of Malaysia also look into this whole industry. And when I joined in January 2019 and the regulation framework literally or guidelines literally got released like within the same month itself. Like I joined early and it came by like a few weeks later, and that it's all about timing, right? And that's where the Luno team is already geared up to we're going to submit an application. These are the guidelines, nothing too surprising there because we already have it, as part of our DNA and foundation. We have all of the necessary relevant information ready. It's all about structuring it and preparing in the template that the regulators would want to see and review. So we were the first one to submit an application, and that's why we also received our full approval within the same year itself. So it's all about being prepared, and we have also had a lot of consultation, engagement with the regulators before the finalized guidelines were actually released to the public.
Yeah. I was interested in one of your statements before, like you did mention that in the crypto space, there's a lot of sections of community that does not prefer to be regulated, but Luno decides to choose compliance, choose corporate governance. What led to that decision to move away from that? Yeah.
I think from the very, very early days when the founders started Luno, the brand or the organization itself, it has already been embedded in the DNA or the culture itself that we are pro-regulation, because without building trust, fundamentally establishing trust with your customers, establishing trust with the regulators, is all foundational piece for us to be able to move far and long in terms of business. And that's why I think the founders, as well as the senior management of the organizations, we have this embedded in us that we want to be pro-regulation and pro-compliance as well, to be able to create that trust, right? Because the trust not only is about building that trust with our customers, it's also building that trust with the regulators to know that we're not going to do things like in the Wild Wild West style where you're just going to defy everything that they say. Instead, we build trust with them, following the guidelines, and consistently engage with them with conversations to say that, this is, and share. Because ultimately, they are also learning. We're all learning. We're learning how to run a regulated exchange in the market. And of course, for the regulators, they also want to know how can they help the industry or, this section to grow as well. But of course, following their risk appetite, because regulators are all about investors' protection. So as long as the platform is able to demonstrate and show commitment that you have that very high in your priority list to ensure investors are well protected from all angles, you have robust framework, you are compliant with all of the guidelines that have released, there shouldn't be an issue why you shouldn't be operating and scaling your business in the market, right? So that's the approach that we take, and that has been embedded in all levels within the Luno organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see the impact on the prioritization towards corporate governance in Luno, whereby, Luno dominates the market with 90% market share. That is an outstanding feat, right? So, we can talk about corporate governance from compliance or legal perspective, but I want to hear from you, like, and for our audience out there, like, what does corporate governance means as a CEO, as a country manager?
I think for me, corporate governance essentially means about having the right set of structures, rules, and processes in place to ensure that a company or organization is run responsibly, ethically, and also with accountability, right? By the end of the day, we are an investment company or a financial service company. It's all about like people giving you their hard-earned money to invest in an asset, and how are you protecting their accounts, their assets, and how are you delivering good service, right? So it's about that. And I think for us, digital asset exchange like Luno also means that we need to balance innovation and also regulatory compliance, and also keeping customer trust at its center, right? So I think for me, corporate governance is just having all of this in place and ensuring that we run things responsibly. And I'm very proud to share that Luno does that.
I have a question on that then. This is going to be more about inclusivity in governance. And I know to see women in crypto is not quite common. Many see crypto as the boys' club, right? So why is inclusivity essential, not just socially, but also as a governance strength in organizations like Luno?
I think for me is that in a way, Luno, first of all, we hire based on merits and, performance related. I'm very happy to share that within the Luno organization, we are quite equally split in terms of the gender ratio. In that sense, of course, males are slightly higher. Slightly, but we're not too far off. Very proud to share that. And we also have very key female leaders in very, very essential roles within the Luno organization. When I'm saying that, we're talking about legal, we're talking about product, we're talking about even customer support and stuff like that. So we are at the forefront of influencing and providing comments on this, right? So Luno in general is a very inclusive, which we really try to be as inclusive as possible. And of course, but then that boils down to like the talent pool itself. Like if more, it's still attracting a lot more male candidates than female, but we're seeing a lot more applying to join a crypto company, which warms my heart because it means that, they're not against and they have generally much more higher awareness in joining. I think it's more of like when you have women in decision-making roles, it does really lead to better governance outcomes because I think it's just built in our DNA that we look into things a bit more thoroughly, or we consider all options and everything. And I think it creates stability and inclusivity that they are heard, their proposals or their recommendations are really being considered. Like we have a seat on the table. So for me, I'm really proud that I am able to represent that, and I always want to do more even within the organization, but it seems like it's already working by itself by having so many talented, amazing leaders. I'm very proud to work alongside with them, right? Yeah.
And what do you think is like the challenges for a lot of women breaking into the field of crypto? Is because you've mentioned in the beginning, you said like, well, my degree is not in finance, my economy. Do you think that plays a role as well for a lot of reluctancy to enter crypto types of businesses for a lot of women? What do you think is the factors here?
The factors could be a lot of different reasons, but that could be one of it because I think we are generally more geared towards like a more risk-averse kind of, whether or not it's education or just type of studies, industry itself, like we want stability, and digital assets or crypto oftentimes are linked with volatility. And like, one way or another, sometimes they will put in like, it's so fast-paced that I can't keep up. Or sometimes if you throw in the mix of a lot of news, those are the kind of things that it may seem to be creating a negative perception that the industry is so fast-paced, it's so volatile. It's not something that maybe women would want to participate in, right? So that could be the first impression. However, I think we also have a lot internally within Luno. We have a lot of female engineers, product designers, and everyone just wanting to do their job, and they are genuinely just attracted to the whole crypto industry, right? So I think we are seeing it improve, but it could be just the first image of perception that this industry is too much. I want something that's a bit more stable, 9 to 5. I can clock off on time. I don't need to keep up with like what's happening, cause yeah, it's really not for everyone. But I'm seeing a lot more female participants coming into the space, and they're generally just much more interested now.
Amazing.
Yeah. So like how, because we talk about inclusivity from the perspective of corporate governance. How, I know some of your work involve increasing adoption from consumer point of view as well. Maybe you can share a little bit more about the challenges from consumer perspective in getting access to financial services, especially in crypto, and what are some of the works that have been done?
I think for consumers, if we're talking about in general, not just female, in general, I think a lot of them are still looking into like, is this an asset for me to invest in? Because you have to remember that it all boils down to financial literacy, Razin and Sanat. Because if they are already struggling to save, they're struggling to make ends meet and stuff like that, investment may not be right on top of their priority list, right? So I think it's all about like, is this asset like something that I have access or I'm comfortable in investing? The other bit is I think a lot of them is about awareness. So again, the first image or impression is that this is a very volatile market. If given the choice, they will want to put into an asset that's much more low risk, but guaranteed returns. Like the word guaranteed returns is like a magic word for all kinds of investors. So, I get X amount of guaranteed returns and like fuss-free and risk-free, if possible. So I think it's all about that. The other bit is consumers are also thinking about like, there's just so many options out there, right, on the market. And accessibility is not an issue anymore because everyone have a smartphone. You can download any mobile application that you want at this given day. It's all about like which one makes sense for you or which one would you prefer. So it's more of like awareness about choosing the right platform that speaks to you more, whether or not you enjoy using it, whether or not it gives you trust, give you faith that this platform is safe to use, it's easy to navigate. So those are the kind of consideration that consumers will, is it secure? Like that's very, very important because I'm basically investing my money. So those are the kind of things that you need to that consumers consider. And that's why I think Luno approached it in a way to say that, we have gotten our approval from the regulators. So it kind of certifies that we're not just a company operating from some offshore and you cannot find us or you're not aware who are the management or stuff like that. So that's the first barrier of entry. We're regulated. Second of all, how easy it is to use your platform, right? That's also key. And that's why we have intentionally made our mobile applications, both iOS and Android, to be user-friendly. And not to forget that there are also some investors that just prefer to invest their big ticket items on website. That's why it's important to also have a website for investors to invest in because they just have their own preference. And how do you ensure that they can navigate within your platform easily and they can find information easily? I think it's all about ensuring that we provide that accessibility and the user friendliness that we can provide to them. So yeah, I think that's where I see it.
I do love how structured Luno is in terms of planning the product, planning the rollout, planning the corporate governance. So I guess one of the biggest pillars of corporate governance is the 3 lines of defenses. Mm-hmm. So circling back to corporate governance, how do you think crypto firms can apply the 3 lines of defenses in a practical way?
I think that was the questions that when you mentioned 3 lines of defense, I'm like, all right, what's that 3 lines of defense? Okay, cool. No, basically, yes, I think for us, definitely, we have what you have mentioned, the 3 lines of defense in terms of our structure. The first line is basically like the business unit or the product or engineering, basically like more front facing. And the second line and the day-to-day operations, like basically units that are involved or departments that are involved in providing support to customers. So we have that. We do embed it in the sense that, they need to look into when we roll out certain things, when we look into daily operations, what are the procedures that we have. The second line of defense is mostly on the controlling functions like compliance, legal, risk, Are they writing the policies and procedures that will help us to better govern like our whole organization structure? And we have to closely follow that. And it's not that we need to discuss about that in like committee meetings and escalate it and stuff like that. Third line of defense usually is audit. We have internal and external audits, and they run their own independent review. That is not to be influenced by any internal parties. So those are the kind of schedulings that they have to put in to say which sectors or which process or procedures that they're looking into in conducting the audits. So Luno have all of this in place, supported by data analytics, supported by the relevant kind of stuffs that we have. I think all of these are important to ensure that we provide a good governance in the sense that we really run business in a responsible way. And we are able to demonstrate to the regulators as well that, all of these functions have its own roles and responsibility. It's not about just rolling out and, customers can use it and we can just be done with our day and, just keep churning out. All of this, I know for a fact because I'm a senior management, I take a very close view of how all of these are working together. And sometimes, we have discussion where it has breakdown between any of these lines and how can we just generally make our customers aware that, there's really a lot of work happening behind the scene. And there's also a lot of responsibility as well to demonstrate to the regulators that we really doing business in the right way. And usually when we demonstrate, we have these 3 lines of defense and the clear segregation of roles and responsibilities and how does it work between each other. It usually really impresses a lot of external parties because they're like, wow, you're really thinking about governance. You're really thinking about running a business that is compliant with the local guidelines. And sometimes they're a bit surprised that we do have this. And that's really interesting to see their reactions. And I'm like, yeah, we're quite proud that we have this.
Yeah, the overall perception is, there's always this notion that compliance or legal or risk is always against the innovative nature of business, right? So, and especially in fintech, everything moves in such a fast pace. So how do you reconcile the need for speed versus the need for stability, which comes from risk and compliance?
I think within Luno, like I mentioned, it's already embedded in our culture itself that we are pro compliance and pro regulation. However, doesn't mean that we follow as it is. They could advise and provide recommendation on like, this is the best way to run the business because we need to be compliant of like this. The business unit is, I think ultimately to sum it up is that we're all working together to ensure that the organization, the business, or even the entity is being protected in the sense that we are running business the right way, a compliant way, and risk is known and managed, right? Ultimately, no one is intentionally going up against and making your life miserable or suffer. Because I think the notion about like business versus compliance is always like enemy forever. I don't think that applies to us because we generally have the same mission and the same goal. How do we deliver a product or run a business in a regulated and compliant manner? We are always up for discussion. So if a certain thing, like I'm sharing, for example, if a certain policy or procedure is really giving a bad customer's experience, and that's the part where the business representative like myself, we need to call for a meeting internally and basically state the problem statement. We're going to say that we're receiving more complaints about this because of a certain policy or procedures that have been set forth by the controlling functions. Can we have a discussion on how do we make this whole process a bit more bearable for everyone? Because ultimately, yes, we understand that there's a need to be compliant and follow the guidelines and everything, but sometimes we also need to balance between ensuring that customer experience is also protected and maintained. Because ultimately, we are a financial service company. If you're consistently delivering a bad experience to our customers, you're really losing out in terms of like, loyalty or, customers that genuinely wants to use you. So we shouldn't be punishing good customers and stuff like that based off internal policies that we could look at. So those are the kind of things that we will establish and have conversation, and we'll find a middle ground that ensure that compliance function maintains integrity to ensure that we are compliant, but business side also is able to convey and express that out from our side of view that, these are the kind of things that we're experiencing or seeing at the front line. And usually it will come out to maybe not all the time that business unit will get the ending that we want, but at least, it's being discussed, and both sides will try to find a middle way. And I really like that how our controlling functions like legal, finance, and risk were all very business friendly in that sense, but of course maintaining the integrity that, as a legal and professionals, you have to ensure that the entity is doing things the right way and compliant with the local regulation.
Absolutely. And I think you brought something very important earlier on, which is the user experience. One of the biggest barriers for adoption for the blockchain industry as a whole, whether crypto, NFTs, or otherwise, has been the user journey. A lot of people find it daunting, a lot of checks and so it becomes very complicated. In our first podcast with Resin, actually, we spoke a lot about Malaysia, Singapore, and Asia Pacific as a general being one of the fastest adopters of e-money and mobile money. And so how do you guys look into convert these users into a similar experience, something they're familiar with? Is this a key focus for Luno to make it as seamless and as easy to use as mobile money?
Yes, of course. I think that is also part of our mission as well, like, the accessibility, right, as well as how user-friendly the platform is designed to be. So that's where we intentionally ensure that from the start of onboarding, so to comply with regulation, you need to do KYC, know your customer. So basically, there is a necessary data collections that we need to have, and we need to validate and verify so that there's no identity theft and you're really signing up using your own identity documents. So from the start of onboarding down to the journey of buying or selling cryptocurrency, all of these sections are intentionally designed that's where we have product designers, product managers that really factors in and put themselves on a customer lens. If I'm a customer and I'm going through this, like, is this even reasonable, or I'm confused? Or is the copy, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So we intentionally build it to be seamless. And that's where in Luno, within minutes, you can get your account verified. It's just that on the back end, there's just a lot of checks that's being run to verify your identity, to ensure your documents are not tampered, are not stolen. There's no mismatch. Like, it could be inserting a different name in comparison with your identity document. So those are the kind of checks that we run on the background. But from a consumer end, like from the customer facing side, you don't know. You just like, I've just taken a picture. All right, I've submitted the document, right? And then within minutes, you will say that your account is verified. There's just so many things running on the back.
That is fantastic. So you guys deal with all the headache and you make it as seamless as possible for the end user. And that's how it should be, obviously. But now I'm more interested in you, Scarlett. You've been in the industry for 6 years. You've been really early on in this journey. So outside of work, do you follow any unique blockchain projects that you find exciting right now? What do you think are the most new and upcoming use cases for blockchain and crypto that are going to be changing the landscape in the coming period?
I think for me is that I'm quite boring after work, because I think running a regulated digital exchange kind of consumes you from just from an energy and brain power point of view. So after work, I just tend to not think about crypto. I try not to, because it just means that 24/7 you're just thinking about crypto, right? I don't think that's healthy. So trying to spare myself from it. But I think for me is that 2024, it's up to leading to now 2025. We're definitely seeing more institutional. Rightfully, you have seen the ETFs being launched, institutional talking, of course, the US talking about crypto, strategic crypto reserves and stuff like that. So those are the very positive moves that I'm quite excited to see how traditional finance or industries that is really conservative in terms of looking into digital assets, how would this change their perspective in terms of starting to incorporate digital assets or crypto into their portfolio, right? Of course, there's just so many of these coins or digital assets out there. Even with the notion of thinking about incorporating Bitcoin in part of their portfolio, it's already a something that is really nice to have already, because I think you could say that while the world is moving into institution sort of adoption in digital assets or tokenized real world assets and all this kind of like talks, in Malaysia, contrary to belief, that it's actually we're quite new in this space. We know for a fact because we have started to push for institutional adoptions. The feedback has always been, we're not quite sure we're ready, or we do not have the expertise to deal with this piece, because I think or the third thing is that can you showcase to me proper governance on how would it work if we do want to collaborate, right? So those are the kind of things that we're starting to see, and I'm really excited to see when there's more and more positive news about big corporation, big organization, even the government of US talking about crypto. Yeah. How would this really shift their mindset and starting to see actionable, like executionable, like stuff where they would really consider adopting it, right? Because in the past it was just like theory, or they're still thinking about it and stuff like that. So I'm really keen to see how would it really flourish in the next year or so.
So obviously, after whatever happened in the US, there's a huge global interest towards the digital asset landscape, right? Of course, that pull in interest from businesses to be customers of exchanges. Do you want to talk about how, is there a shift from retail to business in terms of customers, or are there an uptrend shift for, even market makers, liquidity providers? Do you see any shift of trends?
In Malaysia itself, it's still pretty much dominated by retail, just because of how mature it is already in terms of concept and in terms of the awareness of it. Like the retail users are much more familiar that it's a asset to buy and hold. I could get gains like much more easier than just investing in stocks or fixed deposit or unit trust. So the concept of it is not foreign. For institutional, the conversations have been easier in the sense that you don't need to sell them that, this is big or this is something for you to look at. They are starting to warm up to the concept and are much more open for engagement and discussion. And they are always, in the past, it's more of like, I'm not ready, or crypto is not for us, it's too volatile. I don't know what does this entail. But at this moment, I think we're seeing much more interest from an engagement point of view, Razin. We're not to the stage of collaboration yet, but it's on the stage of like, hey, I'm interested. I would like to know more because it's happening around the world. People's talking about it. Regulators like Securities Commission have been actively pushing for this agenda as well. In fact, last year, October, which was an annual FinTech Summit, they actually launched, it's called SC times SC, where they actually launched this summit actually has like a theme to it, right? And last year was about institutionalizing digital assets. And they have been very intentional in inviting C-levels, inviting key decision makers from organizations just to partake in the summit, whether or not as a participants, whether or not as a roundtable, participants in contributing their view, their opinions. So you could see that regulators are trying really hard to push through this agenda to let institutionals or traditional finance people in Malaysia to be much more open to the concept of it and not be afraid of engaging with players like us. So that really helped. But again, it's still slightly early days because everyone's a bit more of a look and see, and with uncertainty in the global macroeconomics where trade wars, tariff wars, all these kind of things, you just throw in the mix, it's a bit concerning for them. So may not be the right immediate priority for them to consider, but definitely within the horizons where they need to look at it.
Just to follow on Razin's question, and thank you for that answer. Because from my perspective, I've run a company, a startup in the blockchain space. And one of the key things that we always struggled with at that time was finding a crypto exchange that would offer us a corporate wallet so we can pay vendors, right? So we have a lot of like contractors that we hire, developers that they want to get paid in crypto. They don't want to get paid in fiat anymore. It's faster. They don't lose as much fees, and it's much easier. And that is something that we constantly struggled with, where we had to use our personal wallets to transfer money. And it was really messy to get that. And we're seeing as well more online e-commerce shops accepting crypto as payment as well. Do you guys, is Luno playing in that field today? And what is your plans for that in the future?
So if you're talking about institutional having a business account, yes, Luno is playing in that field. In fact, in the last 2 years, we have been quietly building, and just early this year itself, we're very proud to announce we've launched Luno Institutional. So that is definitely within our roadmap to continue to expand and build functionalities and features that speaks to business account users. Because in the past, Luno has always been a retail-focused brand. But as we see how the industry has matured and developed, right, institutional is just a natural next step of evolution. And it's not a piece that we want to let go as well, because it's all about like building that whole ecosystem, right? So retail will continue to be something that we're good at, and we'll continue to build functionalities to serve our retail customers. Luno Institutional, on the other hand, it's all about speaking to institutionals, having a seamless onboarding for our business account users. And as Razin would probably know, that retail users and corporate users are very different from a guidelines point of view. Like the whole stretch of requirements needed is totally different. Like it could be like a times, I don't know, double or triple the requirements just for the complexity of it, right? So those are the kind of things that Luno is learning and trying to incorporate into the whole experience for our business customers. But at this moment, yes, we are already serving business account users. We're talking about proper business, startups or not, having an account with Luno, and whether or not you use it for investing purposes or you're using it for operating purposes, like you mentioned, paying your vendors or paying, receiving your service in crypto instead of fiat. And, those are the kind of things that, or customers that we're already serving, right? We will continue to build that to ensure that we incorporate more functionalities that will make sense for them, like things like, sub-wallet, sub-accounts, because with proper good governance structure, you cannot assume that there is only going to be one person managing the account. They probably have to think along the line like how a banking system works, where you have a maker checker or you have a reviewer who is authorized to only access certain things, who is only authorized to do certain functionality. So those are the kind of things that we've already starting to build and rolled out. And while it's not really mature yet, but we are very confident that in the next 1 year or two, we will definitely see much more features being rolled out. And in terms of users in Malaysia, we intend to also scale it to onboard more and more key institutionals. But on your just to follow up on your second bit of the question, right, Sanat, you mentioned about payments. I just wanted to share that that's not the game that we will be playing in Malaysia, just because I think the notion of payment or instrument of payment itself, that does not sit under the purview or oversight of Securities Commission SC, and that's under Bank Negara, which is the Central Bank of Malaysia. So we don't term digital assets as legal tender here. It's not recognized as a legal tender. It's known as a securities, which means that you only can use it as investment purposes. So Luno, in its core mission and goal, will continue to work towards that direction of investment related. For payments related, it really subject to how, if there's any involvement or change of view from another regulatory body, Central Bank of Malaysia, in terms of how they view digital assets as a mode of payment and stuff like that. But at this moment, Luno does not have an immediate game to dive into payment in Malaysia. However, we already have Luno Pay in South Africa, which is a very interesting concept, and it's really doing really well because that's a function or feature that is being asked by the customers, and it complies with local regulation, like in the sense that it's not being viewed negatively. But in the context of Malaysia, where I'm based at, that's not something that we're pushing for.
Okay. That's something that we always talk about, like the definition of whether it's going to be a security or is it considered a utility token versus just an alternative currency, right? Like a cryptocurrency. And I guess that's still a discussion to be had with the regulators. Do you see that changing in the next 10 years, you think, in Malaysia?
10 years is very, very long, right, Sana? Like if you ask me in a year, I would say no. In 10 years, probably, but it really speaks about what is it. I think regulators like Central Bank or even SC, they all have this same concept. If you want to introduce a disruptive or innovative stuff in the market to Malaysians, what exactly it's solving? Like, what's the problem statement that you're solving, and how does this benefit Malaysian? So if in the concept that, introducing an alternate currency is going to be able to solve certain kind of problem statement, of course, they would probably be considering it very seriously. But if they don't see a value in terms of why there is a need for it,
Yeah, it's typically would be like for cross-border payments, right? Like, so when you're dealing with vendors from other countries, and again, the whole exchange of currencies and the time and the cost, that's what I see the biggest reason, or from my perspective, when I worked with vendors. I have vendors in Hong Kong, I have vendors in Senegal, I have vendors everywhere. So when I want to pay them, it's a nightmare to convert to, especially non-hard currencies. But if we can all deal in, so this was for me like the key aspect of it.
No, probably I do agree with you, Sanat. That's probably the angle that if regulators do want to seriously consider, that is something that they will look into as well, on how do we optimize and further improve the cross-border remittance to be much more efficient, saving costs for every party that is involved, right? But at this moment, they are pretty much satisfied with the current system. But, as usual, regulators will continue to look into relevant, innovative products in the market that would help in any way. And in fact, I think our regulators are really, really advanced in terms of, what they are looking at, what they are researching on. And yeah, I think never say never, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always pro stablecoin, always pro allowing digital asset to be used as a mode of payments. Maybe we can use this opportunity to, as a crypto exchange provider, what would be the benefits of using digital asset as payments? Maybe you can share a little bit of how Luno Global approach it. What are the key benefits that you guys have observed?
I'm not too close with the whole project of Luno Pay that it was launched in South Africa, but I do know that the concept of it is that a lot of people are unbanked, and particularly in that region, and they could have a high level of mistrust issue with banking system or traditional finance. It's not uncommon to hear someone do not have banking facilities, or they don't have a bank account, right? Or even mobile applications. So the concept of money is very different in different regions. So where Luno Pay was introduced, I think it was to be served as that, maybe to close the gap between that and serving the unbanked. Like, you are still able to get access to your groceries. You can still have concept of digital assets being used as a mode of payment, right? So for me, that's where the whole objective is, trying to close the gap where Luno Pay is being introduced. That is quite different in Malaysia, in the market of Malaysia, in the context of Malaysia, because Malaysians all have, I think banking is not a foreign concept. Everyone does have at least one bank account, whether or not it's opened by your parents, you inherited it, or, you open it because you're an adult already and you need to access, right? So, and also mobile application, banking apps is like the norm. Everyone would have at least one banking app. So you would say the adoption of this kind of thing is quite high in Malaysia. So for me, is that stablecoin definitely does help, but from where we see it, stablecoins is mostly used for trading purposes. USD peg stablecoin. It's mostly used for trading purposes where, you get not for a USD peg stablecoin, it's one-to-one and stuff like that. It reduces the risk when you do trading, and when you're doing in a large volume, it's just much more effective and efficient for you. And so we're seeing that. But I think the concept of stablecoin, again, because it's currency pegged, we have already had a lot of engagement with regulators to talk about it, but I think regulators are still reviewing in the sense that what is it actually that it's solving? What problem is it that it's actually solving? And by introducing it in the market, what risks it introduce as well? And what controls does a platform like Luno or a digital asset exchange have in place to ensure there is no risk that entails with it, right? So I think they're being really, really cautious. I think we're making some breakthroughs there where they have started to ask us more queries, more engagement. We're not there yet in the sense that they are not like, oh, good, green light, but at least we're seeing some form of progress in the sense that they're much more open to the concept, because in the past, they'll be like, no, That's not something that we will allow or consider. But at this moment, I think we're starting to see them being much more intrigued and would like to understand more. And I think I take that as a positive sign. It means that you are really thinking about it. Yeah.
I love that you listed down basically some of the most common pain points that's not just applicable to Malaysia, but like applicable to a lot of jurisdictions as well. Like, number one, how a lot of regulators still struggle to define digital assets or categorize digital assets. Second, in terms of, the trust between crypto as well as the banking industry, there's a lot of debanking practices in some parts of the world as well. And, in terms of institutional adoptions as well, there's a lot of reluctance and hesitancy due to the volatility of digital assets. So perhaps let's use this opportunity to educate these parties. Like, what do you think that crypto exchange can demonstrate to gain that trust? What are the best practices that you can demonstrate to showcase that there's a trust in crypto?
I think first of all, it's just more of like ensuring that whenever you engage with regulators, like for us, because we are a regulated digital asset exchange, we do have very frequent engagement with the regulators for all different kinds of discussions, right? We also are being audited, those are the kind of, and it can go quite in-depth in terms of our internal policies and procedures. I think building trust is ensuring that you walk the talk, Brazil, because you can have all different sorts of policies and procedures that you create, but if it's not being executed or it's not being followed by all levels of your organizations, like whether or not it's down from board of directors down to customer front facing, sort of like customer success support, those are the kind of things that it defeats the purpose, because there's no point of you writing the policies and then you're not following it, right? So those are really critical to ensure that you walk the talk and you practice what you've already written. So that's where I think all levels of organizations also have audits, or I think in CS we have the QA and the quality assurance, this kind of thing where they will check in if customer success. Our customer support team is like following the policies, compliance advisory, constantly conduct gap analysis, constantly do what we call as the business-wide risk assessment. Well, I think BWRA. I think Razin is familiar because that was something that he introduced, and I'm just like, what's this BWR concept, right? So all of this, we have a lot of frameworks, Razin, and Sanat. We have a lot of frameworks that the Luno organization checks in, and we have ongoing like things like enterprise risk management framework. We have the business risk assessment framework. We have proper regulatory universe where we map down the guidelines and stuff like that we have. What's the risk that comes if you're not compliant with it? I still remember looking at that sheet. I'm just like, if you're not compliant, this is the fine. This is like the outcome, reputational damage, regulatory fines and stuff like that. We also have ongoing compliance risk management plans, CRMPs that keeps being updated by the compliance advisory team. We have ongoing risk model scoring, because as an organization, it's all about managing risk. So customers that comes in also needs to be risk scored to understand how much risk we have and whether or not certain kind of like higher risk customers, do we need like more enhanced due diligence. So having all of these frameworks really help us to ensure and demonstrate to the regulators that we are indeed running a secure and compliant platform. And we also often get challenged in the sense that you wrote this, can you demonstrate to us how it's being executed, right? So those are the kind of things that we continue to build trust with regulators. And that's where Luno, since gotten the approval in 2019, till now, the trust continues to be there. And that's where Luno was even nominated as one of the participants to be assessed by FedF. And so Malaysia underwent a mutual evaluation exercise this year itself. And Luno was very proud to be nominated as one of the VASP, the first of its kind, to be interviewed and assessed by FedF assessors. It's quite daunting, but then again, we did our best and ensured and provided all of the necessary robust frameworks that we have, controls, thresholds, monitoring tools, and policies. And it was generally an eye-opening experience for us, at least in Malaysia context, because it's the first time ever. And we often constantly also have discussion with regulators to ensure that, we are aware about the changes in the guidelines that they have sent. We have conducted our gap analysis. We have a plan in place. There's no such thing as like everything is 100% compliant. Of course, we strive to be, but definitely the gap analysis help us to map and ensure that, we are aware what changed, and we are aware when we have a plan in place to ensure that we close the gap.
How was the experience with the FATF mutual evaluation? Like, maybe a lot of viewers will be curious to hear about it.
I wasn't there, but two of our members were there, being interviewed. So, what was told was that it was 11 panel sort of session, and there's just two of them being faced with that 11 assessors. They do ask a lot of questions, but mostly related to the FATF immediate outcomes that they have already highlighted. The team did really well in terms of demonstrating that the policies, the procedures, the frameworks that we have, and also walking the talk in terms of like when we say we raise a suspicious transaction activity, what are the process that entails with it, right? And how do we perform and conduct the check and balances? So I think overall verbal feedback was that it's good. However, we're not quite sure in terms of the outcome yet. I was told that the draft report might come very soon in April, but to be honest, the VASP industry did our absolute best to represent the high standards that we have, and hopefully you will see it in the reports, the draft report at least in April, and if not by the end of the year, that's where the finalized report will be released.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. You basically outline all of the best practices that, startups as well as, fintech funders should start to replicate, business-wide risk assessment, managing relationship with regulators, managing relationship with international stakeholders. But yeah, that's the best practices. And I believe Sanat has a lot of quick fire questions that he wants to go through.
So let's go through this as we wrap up the session. So the quickfire segment, I'll ask you 5 questions, and I would love to hear your answer in like a brief, sentence or so responses, just to see what you think. This is more fun, so hopefully it'll be fun. Let's get started with the first one. So,
all right.
Biggest governance myth in crypto you'd love to debunk?
I think one of the biggest misconception is that strong governance means it kills innovation and slows down growth. I think that's actually quite untrue. In fact, I think governance provides stability and the structure needed for sustainable innovation.
Great. Number 2, a governance lesson you wish you knew earlier in your career.
The sooner you embrace governance, the less stressed you are. No, kidding. The stronger your foundation will be for growth, right? And I think if an organization that prioritizes transparency, compliance, security from the start, you really avoid really painful regulatory roadblocks down the road. There's no shortcuts in life.
No shortcuts in life. That's good. Next one. If you could describe crypto in one word, what would it be?
Crypto in one word, accessibility. I think you just unlock access to everyone. You don't need good credit. You don't need good credit score for a bank account or something like that. Yes, you just need internet to access it.
Great. And favorite crypto project, or could be NFT, purely from a fan perspective?
You could call me as a Bitcoin maxi because I believe it's the most established one. That's me personally. Okay,
last question. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto, in your opinion?
I don't know. It's everyone, I think. It could be anyone, everyone. We're all Satoshi Nakamoto.
We're all Satoshi. Fantastic. So this is it. This concludes the quick fire segment. And thank you so much for your time today. Really, we learned a lot and was an eye-opener to get a deeper understanding of the back end of these crypto exchanges. We all deal with them on a daily basis, but it's good to see, behind the curtain. Before we wrap up, I just leave you with the last thing. Any, parting reflections or prediction or any personal notes you'd like to add?
No, I think thank you, Mooncast, and of course, Sanat and Razin for inviting me. I think really need more of this podcast where we discuss crypto and legal or compliance side of things, because not all the time you get people talking about content like this. It's all about like what projects, what, how do you see it pumping and stuff like that. So I think it's really refreshing. And thank you for having me in terms of sharing my experience and what I know of from the very short 6 years of experience I have running a regulated digital asset exchange here.
Well, they say a year in crypto is like dog years. So your 6 years will be multiplied by 7. So you've done well for yourself. You're ready for retirement at this point.
I do hope so, Sana. Maybe I'll visit where you are.
Exactly. Or maybe a long vacation.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.